what is innovation at ARCO? Like, what does it mean? What does it mean to you guys? Like, just speak broadly about it, and then we can dive into the detail.
Yeah, innovation at ARCO is interesting because ARCO is in generally like a pretty innovative group. We do, I would say, as far as construction companies, we lean younger. And we also have people who come from different industries, from other GCs. So a lot of times innovation is just helping other people explore their ideas.
So some of the biggest pain points at you and ARCO are experiencing right now.
Yeah, I mean, well, I think one that is yet to be seen is how the proposed tariffs will affect some of our supply chain issues. I think that we're starting to see things stabilize after COVID. And who knows? I mean, honestly, who knows what's going to happen next in that arena?
Okay, how do you evaluate then which innovations are worth pursuing versus those which are just hype?
Yeah, that's definitely part of like the secret sauce that's always being recalculated a little bit. I think over the past couple of years, we've tried a few different ways of measuring essentially like what projects to go after, like what innovation is worth our effort. And our current way of measuring that is kind of measuring what's our effort to roll something out. What's the impact of it? Is it something that's only going to impact one division, or is it going to impact the entire enterprise? And like what's the ultimate like ROI? Are we saving money? Are we saving time? Are we saving some equation of that? Something else it's kind of always a factor when we're looking at those types of equations is just the human aspect of it. Is like, does this improve someone's quality of their day to day? Which is always a hard number to track or to kind of quantify. But we do try a lot of our projects. We run like an internal NPS about some type of process at the beginning and then at the end as a way to try and quantify that.
Broad question then. Any generic blanket advice for people building tech within construction that comes to mind? Or some gripes that you've had whilst you're using this stuff that you think, why does everyone not just do this in this way better?
Yeah, I think like one thing that we've really had to learn is to boil down and solve the problem that someone is asking for. Don't try and solve all of the other things that we know are out there. So sometimes simpler is better. And I think some of the tools that we've built internally are basically the simplified version of something that might already exist in the marketplace. But we didn't need all those other things. We just need one aspect of it.
How do you see the role of a general contractor evolving over the next 5 to 10 years?
That is a tricky question. I think it's interesting because many people feel that GCs are more than anything have honed in on just the management side of things and getting contracts set up and getting the business side of a project complete. And I think that there's definitely been some concern that there is the aspect of getting a job built has like kind of lost some of its urgency, and some of the skill that it takes to get things done on site. So I hope that in the next 5 to 10 years that there's an emphasis on like the project work itself, not on like there's always going to be someone who needs to balance a budget and needs to make sure that change orders are getting signed and things like that. But what of the craft of building a building? How do we put an emphasis back on that side of things? And at the end of the day, cheaper, faster isn't always better.
How is technology actually used in AEC? In corporate innovations, we explore the innovation and implementation procedures used by those who actually use the tech on a day-to-day basis. Before we get started though, if you're a startup founder or operator responsible for innovation in your company, or you want a deeper, more insightful look into technology in AEC, you won't want to miss our newsletter. From deep dives into particular technologies such as AI, robotics, design, software, and so on. Hot takes from investors betting big in AEC technology and advice on building tech companies, including the stories and takeaways of the most successful AEC technology founders. Head over to www.bricks-bytes.com and sign up today to get this exclusive material straight to your inbox. And now for the episode.
Okay, Kathryn, thank you for joining us. Okay, before we dive into ARCO's innovation process, can you tell us about your role and perhaps what you do on a day-to-day?
Yeah, sure. So I'm Director of Innovation and BDC at ARCO. ARCO is made up of 5 different general contracting businesses, and our innovation group sits at the center of those. So similarly to how accounting or HR kind of serves multiple groups, so does our innovation team. We also make an effort to separate ourselves from IT. IT is more helping to run things that have already been implemented across the company, troubleshooting, that kind of thing. And innovation we think of as more looking for the next process improvement, the next technology. And lately we've also been kind of leaning into the idea that innovation doesn't always equal technology or software. It could be process improvement and things like that. So that's kind of an interesting pathway that we're exploring right now. So my day to day is kind of working with individuals across the organization. That might be a project coordinator, it could be a superintendent, it could be an accountant, it could be someone in HR, and understanding what their pains are or ways that they think that something could be done better. And then kind of connecting them or leading them through a process improvement. So, no 2 days are ever the same. And you can only do so much even at this point plan your week. You kind of just have to like hold on and see where things take you.
Okay, so you mentioned, correct me if I'm wrong here, but I think I picked up that you said you have one innovation team at ARCO that serves all 5 other companies, right? Could you tell us what are the 5 other companies?
Yeah, so it's ARCO Murray Construction, ARCO Design Build, ARCO National are the main ones that we serve.
Okay, cool. Well, I'm glad you remembered because there's probably like it's like one of those things where people ask me like, oh yeah, I can't remember all 5.
Yeah.
Okay, sounds good. So okay, I think we can move on from there. I think I was gonna ask you about no, let's move on. Okay, cool. So what is innovation at ARCO? Like what does it mean? What does it mean to you guys? Like just speak broadly about it and then we can dive into the detail.
Yeah. Innovation at ARCO is interesting because ARCO is in generally like a pretty innovative group. We do, I would say, as far as construction companies, we lean younger. And we also have people who come from different industries, from other GCs. So a lot of times innovation is just helping other people explore their ideas. So that might be, connecting them with the startup that we know to run a pilot. It might just be kind of like helping them organize themselves to really test something thoroughly. But other times it's someone coming to us with an idea of saying like, hey, this process really takes me a long time and I don't enjoy it. So then it's up to us to kind of really identify like what about that could be improved. So for example, it could be something like daily logs for our superintendents. Our superintendents' time is not valuable sitting in a trailer typing up notes, right? Like our superintendents really enjoy and do their best work when they're out on site troubleshooting. So, how can we then come up with a better solution so those processes are still getting done daily? Because it's obviously really important for us to have those records, but it becomes less of a burden. So it's kind of the balance. And I would say in general, most of the innovation that we focus on are ideas that come from our associates. There are a few things that we've taken that we as an innovation group see as important and a way to kind of push the industry forward. But for the most part, we're out in the field, we're listening to people, we're responding, And that's how we've seen the most success with the technology that we've brought.
Does it mostly come from the field, or does it also come from, like, because I would define that as bottom up versus top down, where the leadership say, oh, we have a goal to achieve X, there must be some technology to help us achieve that tool or some innovation.
Yeah, there is some that's brought by specific teams. The way that ARCO is set up is we have different divisions based on like their product type of what they build. So certain product types, they might want to, for example.
Hey listeners, I want to take a quick break to remind you about the Bricks Bytes newsletter. If you're interested in learning about the technology shaping the future of construction, you won't want to miss the valuable insights we share each week. To get this exclusive content delivered straight to your inbox, head over to www.bricks-bytes.com and sign up today. Link is in the show notes. Back to the show.
Get better at something like, oh, we're going to have a higher percentage of our daily logs completed, or we really want to start implementing a consistent site security system, or something like that. And those are sometimes more top-down approaches. But for the most part, it's like a project manager reaching out to us to say, hey, I have this really unique situation. Another one that we get called into quite often is when a client has a specific requirement that maybe we've not executed before. Specifically on the VDC side, that comes up more often, where there's some type of particular process or deliverable that a client is requesting, and we're able to kind of step in almost as a consulting group to help make sure that we are able to meet that deliverable and kind of make it as easy as possible for the project team.
Mm-hmm. How do you typically find out about, like, say someone comes to you with a problem, like, what's your first go-to resource for like this? It's not a leading question. You don't have to say Bricks and Bytes, by the way. But
Yeah.
what's your like leading or go-to resource for finding the tech?
So I think that's kind of like the behind the scenes work that's always being done. Our team is constantly like taking demos. We're at conferences. We're connecting. So even if it's a tool that we're like, this isn't the right time for us at ARCO, if it's something that we could see down the road, like we'll take a demo, we'll get to know that product team and everything, so that if the opportunity comes up, we're ready to execute. So I think at any given time, we keep a kind of a roster of tools that we're connected to. It's probably around 200, where we've either seen them or we've demoed them. We've seen them pitch at a competition or something like that, just so that when that call comes, we already kind of have a little bit of an idea. The other part is just our friends and our contacts in the industry of, just being friendly with other people who are doing the same thing and reaching out to say like, hey, what do we do from here? Who have you used them? What do you think about this? Which again is like, I think a big part of our kind of networking that we do and things like that, that's behind the scenes, that is really important, so that when those things come up, we're ready to just jump into action.
Yeah, so it's a collaboration with other general contractors of a similar scale to you guys.
Yeah.
As well. Okay, the question I was going to ask you earlier, which I just remember, was about revenue. What's, like, so we could grasp the size of ARCO? Like, do you know rough employee numbers maybe as well, if you can?
I think roughly we're 1,200 employees, and we do about $7 billion of projects a year. I think we're ENR number 17 this year.
Okay, is that good for you?
We're normally like in the teens. So
okay, good.
Yeah.
Good. Okay, nice. Yeah, sounds good. What I will get on to. You mentioned a list of around about 200. I think it will be interesting for people to know how they get onto that 200 list, but we will get to that. I think it will be interesting to know what's some of the biggest pain points you and ARCO are experiencing right now.
Yeah, I mean, well, I think one that is yet to be seen is how the proposed tariffs will affect some of our supply chain issues. I think that we're starting to see things stabilize after COVID. And who knows? I mean, honestly, who knows what's going to happen next in that arena? Some of the other things too are just connecting some of the tech that we have and realizing that because ARCO builds such a wide range of projects, like we do everything from an industrial warehouse, which is essentially a big concrete box, to a multifamily to we're getting into more and more complex manufacturing facilities. So some of the tech that we recommend isn't recommended for every project type. So it's really trying to find solutions where we can start bridging those gaps. And then the data that's collected from those individual platforms, how can that be transferred so that we are duplicating less and less work? Those are I would say, some of the leading ones. And then we always have clients who come forth and kind of ask for one-offs where it's something maybe we haven't done a lot. So we're kind of experimenting along the way.
Have you found any solutions so far that can help you with just you said it was data across like different project types. Have you found a solution to help you do that yet?
That's something that our developers are working on.
Okay.
We also at ARCO have a data team, so that's one of the things that they're kind of charged with working is we use Procore as our project management solution. So how does something go from Procore to Viewpoint to one of the other tools that we use for something in particular? It's becoming easier and easier as these bigger players in the game are opening up APIs and making those connections natively in their tools, but it's still something that does require a bit of attention from us.
Interesting. You mentioned about integration. Yeah, like how important is it to you guys to have like if someone's building software, like a point solution, say, and it doesn't integrate with Procore, because you mentioned that you use that, is that like a complete no from the start?
It's a hard maybe.
Yeah.
Especially at this point, and it's a maybe depending on what the tool is and what type of information we could push or pull. The way that we think about it is like from most of our projects run with one project manager and one superintendent. So we're already running really lean with our projects. And the less places or the less things that we need to train our PMs or our superintendents to go look for, the better. So the easier it is if everything is kind of either in Procore natively or can be connected to it's going to drive adoption and usage. So it's really better for everyone.
Yeah, it makes sense. And how about you also mentioned another pain point about these one-off projects? I guess there's not one tech solution that will cater to that pain point. However, is there like a particular stack that you're looking at, or does it just depend on the project type that people are coming after? And would it be perhaps that you adopt one specific technology just for that project, even though that technology might not be suitable for every other project that you have?
Yeah, that definitely happens. Or yeah, it might be like a client. For example, we have a couple projects right now. Most of our projects we don't do secure turnstile entries. We just have like an entry point. And we have a couple projects right now that require individual badging and turnstiles. So that's a solution that we've kind of been tracking and assisting along the way with. That isn't something that we imagine being rolled out to all of our projects, but it's required or it's needed for those few projects. And I think a lot of times those are the projects that we have the most impact on because it's something that's the first time that we're trying it. It might be a technology that's in a completely different category than what we've used before. So us being able to kind of be in there and almost work like an internal customer success or just product team really helps ensure our project teams that things will run smoothly, that someone's got your back, like everything, we've got this. Rather than something that's been rolled out, a dozen times or something. Like at that point, it's just rinse and repeat.
Mm-hmm. Okay, how do you evaluate then which innovations are worth pursuing versus those which are just hype?
Yeah. That's definitely part of like the secret sauce that's always being recalculated a little bit. I think over the past couple of years, we've tried a few different ways of measuring essentially like what projects to go after, like what innovation is worth our effort. And our current way of measuring that is kind of measuring what's our effort to roll something out? What's the impact of it? Is it something that's only going to impact one division, or is it going to impact the entire enterprise? And like what's the ultimate like ROI? Are we saving money? Are we saving time? Are we saving some equation of that? Something else that's it's kind of always a factor when we're looking at those types of equations is just the human aspect of it. Is like, does this improve someone's quality of their day to day? Which is always a hard number to track or to kind of quantify. But we do try a lot of our projects. We run like an internal NPS about some type of process at the beginning and then at the end as a way to try and quantify that. Because ultimately, the way I see a lot of these things is like if they're not resolved and it's something that really is cumbersome or difficult about a position, ultimately that becomes a retention factor, which then there is a direct time and money correlation to. So it is important to kind of balance all of these different things. And then as far as like things like hype versus something that's brought to us as a real problem, I think it's important that we are still kind of going after a few of the hot, shiny, hyped tech just to kind of always stay innovative and like realize, hey, does this have a place for us now, or is this coming up further down the road? But not to put all of our time and energy in those arenas. That might be a more like let's spend a couple hours a week exploring this, or if we have a little bit of a slow period, let's look at those things. So that's not like a core of what we do. And something that I think is generally kind of interesting is our team is built of people who've been in this industry for a while. So if there's something that we come across that multiple people on our team are generally excited about, like that has legs, that means something because we see so much of this. So that's something that we kind of also take, where it might be something that we kind of get like a cold call, we get a demo about, and we're like, that's really awesome. And then it might be more of the opposite where we take that and then we're trying to shop that around to project teams to say like, hey, we're really interested in this. Could we test it out on your project?
Interesting. Is there a like I wanted to actually just bring because we spoke to Eric maybe like a couple of years ago now.
Okay.
And I wanted to just pick apart how the venture arm fits into your innovation process as well. Would it make sense for you to answer that now, or would it make sense for us to fit that in my next question, which was going to be about whether there was like steps or stages or framework that your innovation process follows? Because maybe that's a part of it.
Yeah. It fits together a little bit.
Okay.
Yeah.
Okay, you go for it. Answer it how you feel.
Yeah. Yeah. So about the like steps that we take a project through.
Yeah, let's go through the steps, and then we will go to how the ventures. Maybe we can just have a separate point on the ventures.
Yeah. Yes. So our ideas or our projects kind of start in a wide range of fashions. It could be that we're, having lunch in the break room and someone's like, hey, like this, this part of my job is like really horrible. And that normally like pings the light bulb for us to say like, okay, that's something we should follow up and, get to understand, get to the bottom of what's going on. Sometimes it's a project manager reaching out to us directly, like giving us a call and being like, hey, this aspect of my job is going sideways. Like I need some technology to help me track it or, whatever that might be. So we get ideas all kinds of different ways. We use a system to log everything that comes our direction, even if it's a, hey, what if, or it stems from one of those lunchroom conversations. We keep all of those and then we kind of are constantly ranking them, to know like which ones to pursue. And then of course there's always the things that it's like no matter what we will go after, which is like if it's a client ask or if it's something where it's just the right time, like enough projects are asking for something and it just is a no-brainer to go after that particular thing. So depending on what the problem is, it might be something where we use our internal team to build out a solution. If there's nothing in the market that really fits exactly what we need, or it might be something like a connection or something like that. other than that, like, yeah, we have a fairly robust list of vendors of different software startups, all those types of things that we can refer to. And depending on the project team and how involved they want to be in that initial sourcing of a solution, we kind of run as an internal consulting group where we will set up all the demos for them of say like, hey, here's 2 different tools that we think could solve your needs. Here are the demo times for them. And then we just kind of like help lead them through the process then. So let's get proposals then for those 2 solutions. Which one do you want to go through? And then we'll be there through the implementation and, making sure that we establish good KPIs at the beginning. We're checking in on those. We're confirming usage along the way, just to make sure things are as successful as possible. And we have a project manager on our team who does exactly that. And that's really been a beneficial role for us to kind of be able to be that extra resource for project teams to make sure that these things run smoothly. And again, to kind of like always have someone's back.
So it goes through like someone has a problem. You then discuss that with your internal team, which you then suggest a solution for. Does it go through a pilot? Like, if the solution is already being used, maybe there's a different process internally that goes through. But then if there's a solution that you need to bring from the external world into the company, like how does that look like? Does it? You mentioned demos. Does it? If it's sent all good, does it? Is there like an approval from the IT team, etc., to a pilot and so on?
Yeah.
Like, can you talk about that?
Exactly. So if it's the first time that we're using it, we typically go through a series of demos. Like me or someone on the team will take the initial demo just to kind of like is this thing even in the right direction of something we want? The last thing that we want to do is like send our project teams to watch a bunch of demos that aren't relevant to the problem that they're trying to solve. So we kind of like do the initial screening for them. And then if it's something that we've not used before, we do have an review board with our IT team, primarily around security and things like that. So we'll go through that process. And then we really, for pilots, try to be specific about what exactly it is we're testing, what's the duration of the thing that we're testing, and like what improved outcomes should we see from this particular pilot. From my past experiences, pilots can get really drawn out and can get vague, and it's helpful to really keep them contained as much as possible. If the pilot goes well, then something kind of becomes like one of our like recommended products. So we keep kind of a separate list of recommended products, where there are things that have already essentially been vetted. Where if someone comes up with a similar problem in the future, we might not be as involved, just depending on what they need, but it might be more of like hey, we recommend using this particular software for that problem. Here's the contact. At that point, depending on how well the relationship has been formed, like we might have an enterprise deal, we might have preferred pricing, we might have something like that just to make it a little bit easier. But our goal, with some of these tools is that we're really involved in the beginning to set expectations to make sure that we're testing and kind of tracking things properly. And then as they're used and rolled out to more and more projects, we become more and more hands off. But we expect that level of service to remain from whatever technology we're using.
Two questions, actually totally unrelated. So let me start with the first one, and hopefully I'll still remember the second one. The first one was about pilots, and you mentioned about keeping them contained. Like, what do you do to do that?
So I think with pilots, it's really helpful, one, to like, if possible, try it on a limited number of projects. So if it's more of a point solution, like let's just try it on one project and see how that goes. And then also, like I said, setting a duration. So it's kind of, obviously construction projects are a little bit unique in the fact that not every technology is going to be used throughout the life cycle of the project, right? Like something could be used more during design, something might be used more in estimating at all these different phases. So the other part of that too is making sure that we're not forcing the technology during a phase where it doesn't make sense. So a lot of the things, for example, like on the VDC side, you really need to be involved from the very onset of the project. And if you try and bring it in, like when we're breaking ground, it's too late. Like you're not going to see the returns that we want at that point. So that's another aspect of just kind of being a little bit more selective and specific. And it might not be the right fit for this particular thing, but we'll get the next one. So if a project comes to us with a problem, and we might say, you know what, this one we're going to have to just kind of fit things together and make it work. But the next time you have a project, like let's get involved on day one, and that way we can really work through that particular situation. So I think that's like one of the things that we've learned over doing this is that you can't always just like force a solution to work because you really want to set yourselves up for the most success possible. So sometimes the best answer is no, or not yet, or next time, rather than just kind of like having a mediocre pilot just because it wasn't like set up to run smoothly.
So sometimes it can be timing, perhaps for the company that you're putting through the pilot or the demo.
Yeah.
Which is just not right. What's your view on earlier stage startups versus later stage? Do you prefer to work with earlier stage?
Honestly, it kind of depends on what the solution is. Because of ARCO Ventures, we do work with a lot of early stage, which is interesting because then, not to say that we get more of a say in the development that's happening, but we get to really understand like where they're growing to understand, is this a solution that is a good fit for ARCO now, or will it become a solution for us in the future? Just because of some of the unique ways that we operate. Versus sometimes if it's a more mature startup, they've already created a product that maybe doesn't fit exactly the way that we need it to. And at that point, it's harder for them to adapt for what we need. So it's a little bit, it kind of depends on the product type itself. Something that's agnostic, like a site security camera solution, like we've worked with very early stage startups. We've worked with companies that are not even startups. They're full blown enterprise solutions. So yeah, it just kind of depends on the problem that we're looking to solve.
Okay, cool. Okay, yeah. Teased on the ventures part, and you mentioned it again there. So maybe now we can just like explain or discuss how the ventures fits into your innovation process as a whole.
Yeah, the innovation group, obviously there's a lot of overlap with our venture initiatives. So sometimes it might be that we're taking some of those early demos or we're getting looped in just for opinions on what a startup that the venture team is evaluating might be. Just especially given like our different backgrounds. I think that's like another aspect that we haven't discussed is like our innovation group is probably one of the most diverse groups across ARCO. We have people who from all different backgrounds, different stages of their careers, which really makes us like an interesting test bed for those venture companies that come across. And like I said before, it typically carries weight when there's something that we see and multiple people kind of like raise their eyebrows and are like, there's something here. So there's that aspect. There's also, feedback back and forth. Like if there's a early stage or maybe like a Series A company that we're piloted something and it went really, really well, we're obviously in constant communication with the venture team. So like that feedback goes back and forth. And then there's also the companies that we have invested in, and people at ARCO definitely pay attention to that because that means that that's something that we've essentially endorsed. And sometimes they're a little bit more willing to try something. So there's a few companies out there that we've invested in that we kind of are constantly, whenever we have a lunch and learn or we're talking about something, we're always kind of pitching them internally. So that's a benefit for the companies that are in our portfolio.
Do all the companies that ventures invest in not have to, but get used, or do they try and like force them on you a little bit?
Yeah, it's interesting because I would say probably about half get used pretty regularly. We
Hmm.
do have a couple that we've invested in that just like we think that they have a lot of potential, but they're just not a great fit for
Yeah.
what we do at ARCO. And then there are others where like yeah, it's a one-to-one connection, like, and we want to be using them as much as possible.
Okay. Let's talk about a company or technology that you've recently implemented, from initial discovery through and like through the journey, like perhaps demo to pilot to then being rolled out. If you can
Yeah,
remember the full detail.
yeah, yeah. Um, well, yeah, it seems like the last 6 months or so we've been deep in the weeds of site security systems, which is interesting
How
because
come?
it honestly, I don't know. I don't know like why these things sometimes come in waves that are
Uh-huh.
totally unpredictable, but it's so interesting how like different people from across the enterprise and different product types all of a sudden will have like the same need. So there's like some type of like pressure on them.
Yeah. Someone just
Um,
wake up one day, it's like, we need some more security.
yeah, yeah. Um, so, well, it's also the site security systems are interesting because it's a mix of software, hardware, and more AI features. So it kind of like blends together a lot of the different things that we're working on into
Mm.
like one solution. So, some of these are spawned by a project team. So recently there was a project team and their um, insurance requirement was that there was a third-party monitored site security solution,
Mm.
which is an interesting kind of conundrum for us because most of the security systems that we have are not third-party
Mm.
monitored.
Mm.
Um, they're kind of set up to have alerts and things like that, but they're not monitored 24/7. Or there are the ones that are only monitored 24/7, which typically are different, like price range and all of
Yeah, of course.
that. So, yeah, I think recently we've rolled those out to a handful of projects. And what's interesting is that there were a few solutions that we were using across the company. Again, because ARCO is kind of we have about 50 offices across the country. A lot of our project managers are really kind of um, given the right of way to go ahead and like do what you need to do for your job. So we had a few different solutions that were being used in different amounts throughout different divisions. And as some of these newer teams were asking about it and they demoed those other solutions, they're like, that's not really a good fit for what exactly it is that we're looking for. So, and again, I think in reality, site security is one of those things where we're probably never going to have one solution for all of ARCO just because of the complexity of the different jobs we do, the different regions we work in, and things like that. So, um, some of the pilots that we've done recently, what's nice about kind of being a separate innovation team is if someone is willing to try something that maybe they're, for example, one of these projects we got wrapped in like a little bit later when they had already gone through estimating and bidding and all of that, but they really did need uh, security cameras. We were able to step in with our innovation budget and help cover some of the cost of that
Mm.
so that we were able to kind of get the data of the pilot, but we're also able to assist the project team to get what they needed. So it's kind of back and forth. In that particular instance, really what we were just looking for was a solution that was a higher quality like video output and that was more customizable, that like a superintendent could log in and customize their alerts, could customize their geofences and things like that. So that was just kind of like ease of use, which is different when someone's playing around with something in like a demo environment versus it's their project and that morning they need to be able to make a change.
Mm. Mm. Okay. Um, can you talk about one maybe that was not a good fit for you guys, like for whatever reason? Did one come up that you have perhaps been for a pilot and thought this is great, but then actually turned out that the conditions when it was rolled out on site were actually slightly different, or when it was rolled out in the company, and therefore the fit was not good? or even something that perhaps the pilot maybe was wrong. I know you can't name companies and whatnot because of various reasons, but if you can, if not, we'll just move on.
Yeah. I think some of the ones that I don't even know if we've gotten entirely to a pilot place, but tools that we've been interested in from an innovation standpoint are some of the progress tracking tools that can be connected to schedules, 3D models, and then linked to your 360 reality capture. Those are ones that the past couple of years, like as an innovation team, we've been excited about. But when it comes to pitching that to a project team, they're less excited, and then the price kind of turns them off. It's one of those things where a project team can just be like, well, I can do that. Like, I don't need a tool to do that, you know? So those are ones that have been a little bit harder to sell, but something that we're still like keeping a pulse on because we're just waiting for the right time for it to happen.
There are tools that exist that do it well. Do you know?
There's a few, yeah.
Yeah, I definitely know one or two. I know I've never actually seen them in use because they make a lot of claims, and it's like, okay, can you actually do it? And I hear mixed feedback from other people on that as well.
Yeah, and I think it's hard too because like a lot of the jobs, we're not building healthcare, we're not building towers, we're not building these like mega projects that maybe some of those tools are a really good fit for. So in some ways, I almost feel like we're waiting for other people to vet it and make it such commonplace, and therefore like the pricing structure will change and everything like that, so that someday maybe there's an alternative option that a better fit for us to use.
Okay, what are some of the other tools that you guys use regularly?
Okay. I think last spring we worked on the list. I honestly think there's like 50 tools that are in regular rotation at ARCO.
That's a lot.
Like it's a lot. And it is kind of position specific. So what a project coordinator uses is different than what a superintendent uses. But there's a lot of software, and I do feel like as a whole the industry is probably reaching a point of contraction of those different tools that are offered, where it's kind of like, here's tool A, what are the other modules that we're not exploring yet, just so that we can keep that within one tool rather than having different point solutions for everything. I feel like the last few years has been like this period of like pretty extreme expansion of like, yeah, let's get this one thing that does this, has this one particular use case. But that it's really overwhelming for the people who are in the tools every day. And then from a management standpoint, it's all this licensing that we have to track. It's usage. It's all kinds of things on the back end that just takes up a lot of time. That's not necessarily worth it. So, like I said before, probably our biggest tool that everyone's in every day is Procore. I think the other ones that never really get talked about that are so critical to just the way that we do business, and no one talks about how do we create more efficiency, is like Outlook. Everyone is in their email constantly all day, every day, and we never talk about the kind of ways of making email more efficient.
Oh, wow. I'm glad you said that.
So that one is, I think those are the things that are kind of like behind the scenes that everyone just takes for granted. But when we sit down with anyone at ARCO, we're like, what tool do you constantly have open on your computer? It's like Outlook, it's Word, it's Excel. So we've also thought about like, yeah, how do you innovate email?
I mean, that is a huge market. Like an agent that just clears your inbox for you, responds to everyone, and like you never have to look at an email again.
Yeah.
Would be beautiful. I'm sure there's so many people dying for that.
Yeah, and it's one of those things that's actually like so interesting because when you start a construction job, you'll go through all the training courses for Procore, right? But you never sit through a training course for like how to set up your Outlook to be efficient.
Yeah.
How to set up like your kind of set auto responses so that when someone has something, you can like just click a button and it's going to send that response. How do you even like everyone organizes their Outlook different ways. So I think it's like those types of things that like those of us who've been working for a while, we just take for granted that we've developed our own system. But if you're fresh out of college, those are the things that are also so overwhelming because you're like, everyone else seems to know how to do this thing and they do it really well and I don't know yet. So there's obviously like so many different ways to improve things, but
I think
sometimes
that's
you have to like take it back to basics a little bit.
I agree. I think we all moan about productivity and stuff within construction, but a serious productivity hack is if you actually can learn how to use your email tool correctly. Perhaps inbox zero or file things properly, because how much time is probably wasted searching for emails or going through your inbox of 3,000 unread messages or whatever and trying to find that one message. Like maybe that, like you say, start simple, or start from right from the beginning.
Yeah,
before
we've
going
even
too far.
like been advocating that our project managers just always we use Microsoft Teams, so upgrade to Teams Premium, where when you record the meeting, you automatically get the transcript. So when you go back to make your meeting minutes, you have that transcript that you can follow. Like that's an easy hack rather than trying to remember everything that was said during the meeting. There's also like, some of the new agents that are out there that will give you your, at least we'll say a draft of the meeting minutes that you can then edit. But I think like all of those types of things are definitely like stakes. We've been talking to project managers and superintendents about like, hey, like talk to text is an amazing tool. Like when you're out there, you don't have to worry about typing all of this stuff out. Just talk to your phone and it will give you, again, a draft of whatever it is that you're working through. So it's just kind of like these these little productivity hacks and just like making sure that people are aware of them. Because like not everyone's on the side of the internet where you're seeing those videos all the time.
I agree. I think that there's a lot of discussion that we have on the podcast now about how point and click is dying, and it's all going to be voice based as we move forward because of AI tools and large language models specifically. It's so much easier just to pick up and speak to something. LLM processes what you says and puts it into the form that you need to fill out or whatever it might be.
Yeah.
I think it's an interesting time. We are in March 2025. I will caveat this. So what about AI, Kathryn? Like, are you guys embracing it? And I just want to mention the time because these conversations never age too well.
Yeah, they change. Yeah. I think like AI at ARCO has been so interesting because we've definitely gone through, I think, like the full wave of cycles of people being really excited, people being kind of like not here, not now. I think now we've kind of come to a healthy place of testing things out. I think also for us to think about AI like in specific product terms, not like, hey, we're going to, run all of our documents through this thing and it's going to give us all of the secrets of how we need to improve our process, whatever. But, earlier I was talking about site security cameras. It's like, how does AI get used in footage just to record movement better? How does AI get used, even in things of like document review and stuff like that, so that I think in general, one of the big problems in construction is that it is an industry where your experience is what makes you a stronger associate. So how do we get someone who's been in the industry for 10, 15, 20 years, how do we get their experience into someone who's new? So I think that there's a lot of potential in the tools where it's kind of like agents that kind of help coach. One tool that we saw, I think it was probably last year, was actually a tool to help us run our performance reviews. And I thought one feature that they had was so interesting was when a manager is writing a review, there was an AI agent that would help coach you through writing your review to make sure that the review actually said something. It wasn't just fluff, right? It was like basically coaching you to say, what is an action that this person can do to improve, their day to day and things like that. And I think that is so valuable because it's helping people just do their job better. And in that case of performance reviews, those reviews are like what someone looks for of like, okay, this is what I need to do to get a promotion or, to level up, whatever it might be. So it's really important that they get that quality feedback and not just kind of like a bunch of words.
Mm.
Similarly, like talking about the emails and things like that, there's a few kind of email things that I've seen recently that can help kind of coach someone through or help monitor like the tone of emails, which I thought was interesting. Essentially, like all project emails would be run through an AI and it would help kind of gather sentiment of the project. So someone could track if the project sentiment starts to change. That's kind of a red flag that, hey, this project is not going in a good direction. Also, it's just like, again, something that we kind of learn is like email etiquette of how to respond in a way that is polite but brief. And I think that's definitely an art that takes a while to learn. So I think even those tools that are kind of like, hey, this email is maybe a bit too abrupt or something like that. I think all of those are, again, like super interesting ways of just helping us like nudge us in the right direction. So that like, I mean, I think we've all received those emails in the past where it was not someone's intention that was the tone that it was sent, but they were in a rush or something else was going on. And that completely can send you in a tailspin and can kind of change the tone of whatever work is actually happening. So I think those ones are really interesting. That's like kind of a personal interest of mine of just kind of like that day-to-day aspect of it. Less like big picture, big data, but more of like the human aspect of how do we improve the quality of our jobs.
Interactions, yeah. Is there like stringent requirements from a data and IT perspective when you guys are deploying new AI tools?
Yeah, there's a lot.
Yeah, I can imagine.
Yeah, primarily just around like privacy and how is our data being used to potentially train someone else's AI? Like, there's a lot of concern around that right now.
Yeah, okay. Broad question then. Any generic blanket advice for people building tech within construction that comes to mind? Or some gripes that you've had whilst you're using this stuff that you think, why does everyone not just do this in this way better?
Yeah, I think like one thing that we've really had to learn is to boil down and solve the problem that someone is asking for. Don't try and solve all of the other things that we know are out there. So sometimes simpler is better. And I think some of the tools that we've built internally are basically the simplified version of something that might already exist in the marketplace. But we didn't need all those other things. We just need one aspect of it. So yeah, when we kind of look at things, especially when you sit down with it in a brainstorm where you're gathering requirements, whoever you're sitting down to who brought that problem to you, once you start going and then they're like, and it could do this and it could do that, and like things like that, it's like start with something that's manageable and just like really nail that well and make sure that you have the most success you can there, and then continue to kind of like add a feature here, add a module here, that kind of thing. But I would say it's definitely dangerous if you're starting in an area where you haven't really defined what the problem is or what solution it is that you're trying to solve for. That's how you kind of just, I mean, I think in reality too, like a lot of product teams run into those types of problems where they have a lot of things that are good, but no one kind of like solution that is great.
How about customer success? I remember we spoke about this when we pre-interviewed.
Yeah. I think that's probably my biggest pet peeve in the industry right now. Also, like full transparency, before I started ARCO, I spent about 4 years in customer success. So I know how important it is to have that relationship with your customers. And it's so interesting to me that it sometimes just feels like it's an area that's lacking. Especially as a startup, when the product isn't 100% there, the easiest way for me to kind of get over that is if I have a good customer success person who's kind of like leading me through that and help talking me off the edge, basically. But it's like, if I'm going to roll this out to a project, specifically if it's a project where, this is a critical element of whatever it is we're doing. I expect like a 2-hour SLA to return a phone call or an email, not 24 hours, because this again is like some type of function of the project that is critical path. So I've really been kind of amazed by how many times emails will go a day without being answered, even acknowledged. Or if we reach out to say like, hey, we have a project that might be a good fit for you. Like, we want to set up a demo. It might be 3 or 4 days before we get a call back. Like, those types of things, like that service really goes a long way. Because if I reach out and say, hey, I have a project that's going to need a proposal, and it takes you a few days to get back to me, that doesn't give me the confidence that if something goes off on a job, that you're going to be there to support us to get through it. So for some of these things that we're putting a lot of effort into, and then we're also putting a lot of weight on solving a particular problem, we want to be really confident going into it that like this is the way forward for us.
Yeah, that's very insightful. I never really thought about that before, but it's such an important detail. And I guess everyone just forgets about it, right? Like, not having someone to deal with those little touch points that your customers have, like responding to an email or just acknowledging it, like, here, thanks for this, but I'm not going to be able to get back to you in a few days because of X, Y, Z. It's like better than just blanket silence, right?
Yeah, exactly. And then it goes also like in terms of like, we do one project and then everyone is like rushing to get like, okay, can you introduce us to the next project team? What's happening next? And it's like, well, were we even successful with the first one? Like, did you help us measure our ROI? Did you like, we're in this as a team. That's kind of the way that we see it. So, we're not going to just start like making introductions unless we really see the value of the tool and the team behind it. It's just like I said, it's one of our pet peeves of kind of like we want to be treated in a way that gives us confidence to go after and make those introductions to other teams.
One point I think I always wanted to touch upon was about ROI. I always find this a fascinating discussion because it's not like a clear answer. Like, oh yeah, it must save us money, or it must reduce time on site, or it must do this. So, how do you kind of assess? Because I think you mentioned a few things earlier. It was either related to time or money, human aspect of quality, like the quality of someone's job. How is there like a easy way to balance, like if something does not maybe save you that much money but is very good at improving someone's day to day, but is maybe a little bit more expensive, etc.? Like, is there a formula like a E equals MC squared or something?
I wish that there were. We spent a lot of time trying to figure out that secret formula. But I think a lot of it too just depends on the team and the solution. If it's something, like I said, we're really fortunate that we have, some funds for innovation. And is it something where like innovation can kind of just step in to at least like pilot this thing out and let someone experience it? And then if the project manager, the superintendent is like, that tool is amazing, I want that on all of my jobs, then they will build it into their budgets for future work. That's kind of like the most ideal, but it's really tricky to measure, and then to get other people to see the value in those measurements. So for example, like if something, I think this is kind of unfortunate a lot of times that there's a lot of work that falls to our project coordinators, and other people across the enterprise might just say, well, like the project coordinator can do that. Like that doesn't necessarily need to be improved. But at the end of the day, like we want to maintain our project coordinators. We want them to like be use their time as wisely as possible. So sending like follow-up emails might not be the best use of their time. So it's kind of like getting everyone on board to understand like the value of everyone's time and the quality of their time. So again, that kind of also goes back to like the NPS surveys that we've run for process, just because that's the only way to put a quantitative number on a qualitative experience. And now, as like the construction industry in general is struggling to find new talent and all of that, I think like retention has become a bigger and bigger issue. And that we really do need to focus on the quality of people's jobs, and like,
Such a great point.
do they feel like they are contributing and that they're being utilized fully, or do they feel like they're just kind of a paper pusher at the end of the day?
That's a really good point, actually. Yeah, like I suppose a lot of people don't necessarily. I'm sure people do, but whether they take it seriously or not, thinking about staff retention within their organization,
Yeah,
probably
because it's
gets
like
overlooked.
a superintendent doesn't want to be superintendent to fill out reports all day, right? They
Yeah.
want to be out like troubleshooting and chatting with people and making sure things are going well. So, especially when we look at our superintendent population that's aging into retirement, you know, I could see that kind of being a trigger point of being like, I'm sick of doing these reports. Like, I don't want to do this anymore. So I think those
Yeah.
are the things that we have to pay attention to, or like younger people who are new to the industry. Like, what can we do to them to just make things easy, make that transition from like education to the field easier? So that, again, like obviously there's always
hmm
parts of our jobs that we don't enjoy, but I think that there's more and more of our job that could, in a lot of ways, be automated or just be made easier to do or faster.
Yeah. Yeah. I totally agree with you. Yeah. 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 Okay, last couple. How do you assess? Because when we spoke before, you mentioned that you have in-house developers. So how do you guys normally assess that whether something is worth building in-house versus buying externally?
Yeah, it's a tricky one. A lot of times what happens is if what we're looking to do is so specific that in reality there's not a tool out there to do what it is, and a lot of times those might be like connections between platforms. Like no one is going to offer us the perfect connector to move this data from here to there, so like we just need to do that ourselves. The other thing is, if we have a particular problem and we go out and we kind of see all the different solutions that are in that space, and nothing gives us the confidence that like this is going to solve our problem. If at the end of all of the initial demos, our team sits down and we're like, I don't know which one I want to show the project team, that's generally kind of that gut feeling of an indicator that, yeah, we should probably explore just doing this ourselves. And then sometimes it becomes that equation of how much effort is this going to take to build this thing, and what's the reach of the tool once we build it. So in reality, unfortunately, like, our team is not big enough that we're going to build a custom tool for one particular division or one particular team. That would be amazing if we could, because there's probably so many unique problems that could be solved that way. But that's kind of when we get into that equation of unfortunately, sometimes there are things that we have to say no to just because um, it's just the juice isn't worth the squeeze. We're not going to be able to get um, our time back for the project. And in that case, we try to be as transparent as possible to say, like, we're not saying no forever, but right now that doesn't make sense for us. Sometimes we'll go ask other teams, like, hey, is this actually also a problem you're having? Because it could be something that someone else is struggling with and just hasn't been brought to our attention. Or sometimes it might be like, okay, we we can't dedicate the resources to build it ourselves. Here's an existing tool that's out there in the marketplace that's not exactly what you need, but it might get you in the right direction. So yeah, those become the tricky ones, and like the hard part of our job is not always being able to help in the way that we want to.
Sounds tricky, yeah, to deal with. Okay, so what last question maybe, this is take it how you will, but how do you see the role of a general contractor evolving over the next 5 to 10 years?
That is a tricky question. I think it's interesting because many people feel that GCs are more than anything have honed in on just the management side of things and the getting contracts set up and getting everything, getting the business side of a project complete. And I think that there's definitely been some concern that there is the aspect of getting a job built has like kind of lost some of its urgency, and some of the skill that it takes to get things done on site. So I hope that in the next 5 to 10 years that there's an emphasis on like the project work itself, not on like there's always going to be someone who needs to balance a budget and needs to make sure that change orders are getting signed and things like that. But what of the craft of building a building? How do we put an emphasis back on that side of things? And at the end of the day, cheaper, faster isn't always better. It's about like the quality of the things that we're building. Like we should build buildings that are meant to stand, for a lifetime or serve their purpose or, I think maybe our generation is more so concerned with the extreme amount of waste that's in construction. And if we continue to build things that have such a short life cycle, like what are we doing to contribute to that? So I think that I hope that with the kind of the changing of the guard throughout the industry, that there's like more of an emphasis on like long-term thought and like that our job isn't just to deliver a building at the cheapest price. It's also, how can we encourage our clients to build the most sustainable way or a way that kind of sets us up for the long term.
That sounds like that's a very kind of European way to look at it, I suppose, because it pretty much, yeah, honestly, like now it's very much about when people are designing things, like if you're specifying material, you look at it from the lens of, okay, how long is this material going to last, or can it be we call it the circular economy. Does that exist in the US? I don't know.
Not really.
But,
yeah.
No,
I mean,
I've done it. It's like people are trying to get it over here. Like it's starting and it does happen. I'm not sure to what extent, but like, yeah, can materials that being specified like be reused at a later date and so on and so forth?
Yeah. Even like we're running a couple pilots right now for like automated material cutting, which will create efficiency in just like the amount of waste in cutting a particular material to length. So I think that there's like aspects of that are pretty easy to deploy. It's just getting the right people at the right point. And I hope that like as just the world continues to evolve, that more people will find like pursuing those things as important as, saving a little bit of money here or there on a project.
Is it true that Donald Trump brought back plastic straws in the US? This is the big news over here.
I don't think that they ever technically went away, actually.
Oh, okay, fair enough.
Yeah, but honestly, nothing is surprising anymore. So
no, crazy time. Okay, Kathryn, thank you so much for joining us. Could you tell, is there any like initiative you guys are running or something that you're looking for, or if not, then just tell people where they can find out more about you?
Yeah, I mean, we're always kind of looking for anything new in the industry, especially if it's in a particular sector that there's not a lot of solutions for. We have been taking more and more demos from companies based in Europe who are looking to branch into the US for things like material and prefab. We're really excited about right now. So the best way is, find me on LinkedIn. I try to respond to things, but as you can imagine, we get completely bombarded by requests for different things. So, the other thing too is, I mean, we make a big effort to go to as many conferences out there as possible. And I think oftentimes that's the best way to kind of connect, is to get 10-15 minutes. Like, let's talk about what everyone's working on. And then if it feels like there's a good fit, we'll set up time to follow. But that's something that we really enjoy doing, is just like being out there and chatting with people. And a lot of it too, especially because the venture side, we love meeting founders and like hearing people's
Hmm.
passion and like what brought them to try to solve the things that they're working on.
Okay, awesome. Kathryn, thank you so much.
Yeah, thanks.